Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Blackdown House on this crisp morning of whichever date it is. It's the 20th of November, 2025, and we're here unnaturally early for a Standards Committee meeting, for which I thank you all for attending, even though we had to rearrange it. I'm your chair for today's meeting. I'm Eleanor Rylance, and I would like to welcome you all here and to everybody who's watching online. I'm sure there are absolutely squillions of people watching online. We're now going to start by doing a roll call of the committee members here present, for which I'm going to hand over to DSO Officer Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. So I'll start with you, Chair, and if you have any declarations, if you can include that, that would be lovely. Councillor Eleanor Rylance.
I am here and I have no declarations that I can think of. Thank you.
Thank you. I will skip the Vice Chair. I'm hoping we'll be skipping in shortly and move on to Councillor Jessica Bailey. Good morning, Jess.
Morning, I'm present, but I want to declare I'm a county councillor, so obviously I will not be taking part in the discussion relating to county council dispensations, and I will leave the room. And also my apologies that I have to leave at 9:30 because I have a prior meeting that had already been arranged. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Ian Chubb. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning. No declarations to declare.
Thank you. Next to Councillor Tim Dumper. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Debbie. Thank you very much. I'm here and no declarations as far as I know. And just for people, I won't be staying for the scenarios later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Stuart Hughes. Good morning, Stuart.
Yeah, morning, Debbie. No declarations.
Thank you. I don't see Councillor Joe Wibley in the room, so I will move on to our independent persons and members and representatives. So Diana Kerr, good morning, Diana.
Good morning, and no declarations.
Thank you. Patrick Coulter is unable to make it today, so moving on to Robert Wood. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, present, no declarations.
Thank you. On to Martin Goscombe. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning, Debbie. Yes, present and no declarations.
Thank you very much. Next to Ken Bryant. Good morning, Ken.
Morning, Debbie. Present, no declarations.
Thank you, Ken. Next to Pauline Stock. Good morning, Pauline.
Morning, Debbie. Got nothing to declare, thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but by no means least, Serena Sexton. Good morning.
Good morning, Debbie. Present and no declarations as far as I'm aware. Thank you.
You very much. So we are Cora, Chair. You may continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Right, agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting held on 17th of July 2025. Does anybody have any amendments they wish to make, or comments or additions? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Are we happy to note these minutes and move on? Tim. Okay, Tim is proposing the minutes for the benefit of the record and Stuart is seconding them. All in favour of passing these minutes? Thank you very much, everybody. And that is unanimous, I think. Are you okay, Pauline?
So, Chair, if I can just update you. So, yes, one of our independent persons did point out to me that my coding worked very badly, and the originally printed copy that you have before you is missing off some attendees. I can assure you that is corrected, and online you are shown as being present at the last meeting. So, my apologies, and I will.
You are in my online version, Pauline, as are the independent persons and representatives. So thank you for pointing that out, and sorry for the confusion. Okay, right. Thank you very much, everybody. Agenda item 2, apologies. We've done. Have we had apologies? I'm losing the thread.
Not officially, no. So I think we're
confused
okay
with
on that
apologies,
one,
aren't we?
Chair.
So,
Sorry, apologies.
Patrick,
Other than Pat.
Other than Pat,
Thank you,
yeah.
Chair.
Okay. Right, agenda item 3, we've done that already. Agenda item 4, public speaking. There are no members of the public registered to speak today. Agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency on our agenda. Agenda item 6, there are no confidential or exempt items. So we can move on to agenda item 7, which is the appointment of, following quite an impressive recruitment drive, which lasted several months. We now have some absolutely wonderful people to appoint. Now, in your agenda pack, you will see what their names are. Now, the recommendation today is to approve these people, but obviously, if you have any questions about any of those people, please do feel free to ask. Before we do move on to that, though, I do want to say a few words, and I wanted to thank the people who are stepping down from our committee for their absolutely amazing work over the years. And that is Diana, who's leaving us as an independent person, for which we are very, very sorry, because you've been absolutely phenomenal. I know Pauline Stott, thank you, and thank you so much for your service, Diana, and we hope to see you again one day, honestly, in any capacity. Pauline is also stepping down from as parish representative, and thank you very much for your service, Pauline, over the last, I think, 5 years. And Rob is last but by no means least, Rob is stepping down from this committee, but stepping straight into another committee, for which we can only thank him and also maybe slightly pity him, because it is audit and governance. So thank you so much for your service, all three of you, on this committee. Serena, you're staying with us, aren't you? Because your term is not up. Yeah, so thank you. But thank you so much to all three of you for the work that you have put in, and some of it behind the scenes, quite a lot of it behind the scenes in Rob and Diana's case. And for your wise words and your calm steer on this committee over the last few years. And I know, as I say this repeatedly, but the independent persons and the independent representatives are absolutely crucial to our work, because they give a completely different eye from the eye that members may have on the standards process, because they are never likely to be caught up in it themselves, and they also have the public's mindset. And I don't mean that in any derogatory sense whatsoever. I just mean that you come at it with fresher eyes than maybe we do, because you're not affected by it in the same way. Hello, Roy. Do come in, please. So we've just finished agenda item 7, Roy. Right. Okay. So moving back to the actual agenda item, we have 3 recommendations here, which is 3 sets of people who went through a very rigorous recruitment process and came to interview at Blackdown House. The recruitment, Pauline will know because she was involved in it, and Martin will know as well because he was also involved in it. The recruitment process happened over 2 weeks in the end, and out of that we had everybody who came for interview was so impressive. Absolutely unbelievably impressive people came, and for their applications we thank them. And we, by common agreement on the recruiting panel, which was composed of John Loudon and Tim Dumper and Mel, and who else was there? I was there.
Myself.
I knew there was somebody else there as well, wasn't there?
No.
Was there not?
No, it was the 4 of us.
It was just the 4 of us. Okay, all right. Seems like such a long time ago. Nearly 2 months ago.
Thank you to Katie as well, who was
Katie
involved
was,
in
yes.
bringing people in and organising.
Absolutely. She went up and down those stairs quite a few times in her, quite gravid state. So to Katie, thank you very much for watching online. Okay, so from that process, we managed to appoint 6 absolutely wonderful people who are detailed in your recommendations. So 2 non-voting independent members, 2 parish representatives, and 2 independent persons. Do you have any questions about any of this process or the people that we are recommending be appointed? Diana, please.
Can I just ask, are they all men?
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. I do
Sadly,
think
we
that's an
only
issue,
had
'cause
men
I've
applying,
had-
and it was
I've
noted at the time, yeah.
to deal with women is part of my role as an independent member, who particularly asked to speak to a woman. So just interested that there's nobody.
Yeah, we did have very few applications from female individuals, but absolutely, we ideally would like it as diverse as possible. So I totally understand the point.
And the point was made repeatedly by me at the time that it was very male heavy, the application process, the people who applied. So yeah, that is slightly regrettable, but yeah, and I do take your point absolutely that some people do prefer a person of the same sex. So we are bearing that in mind, Diana, and thank you for that comment. Oh, Jess, please.
Thank you very much. I think that's a really important point. Is there anything that we can do about having women appointed now? Can we recruit further? Because we're trying to be diverse and we're trying to be inclusive. So what can we do about that? That's the first comment. The second comment is, I see that Councillor Francis Pullman has been put forward. He's chair of West Hill Parish Council, and I've no doubt he'll be an excellent parish representative. So that's good. But I'd like to ask what can be done, because presumably it's open to this committee to recruit further or alternative.
Do we have any spaces, Melanie, on
So
any of these
if these
roles?
appointments are made, we won't have any spaces. We obviously do have some members who will be coming up at the end of their term in April next year. It's really difficult because we've already gone out twice. So, you know, are we likely to get any further applications? I don't know. But I absolutely understand and accept the point. But obviously, we can only deal with the applications that we receive. So we've promoted them really well. And it is very difficult. But I totally get the point.
Yeah, I think it is worth underlining that we had two application rounds, and the first process yielded very, very few applications, which is why we extended the advertising process for a further, I can't remember how long it was actually, 2 months?
It was at least a month.
Yeah, which yielded more people, but clearly not more diversity. Yeah, no, I do absolutely take your point, and it is a point that we raised at the interview stage as well. But because people are putting themselves forwards, we need more women to put themselves forwards for these roles. So I think maybe it's something we can examine, or about the ad, maybe.
I mean, yeah, yes, and I suppose knowing what we know now, you could potentially target some particular groups to help with that. I mean, the only thing that you could do as a committee, perhaps, is consider whether you wanted to increase some of the numbers in terms, and to therefore, you know, increase numbers and therefore get a more diverse range in. But it is really difficult, and we've also got to bear in mind we've got local government reorganisation as well. So it's where you get that balance. But yeah.
So, Mel, is that within the gift of this committee to do, or is it something that has to go to the Constitutional Working Group?
Yes, and we're looking at the terms of references for the committees at the moment. So it's certainly something that you could potentially propose if you did want to increase it.
Okay, so we could send a recommendation to the Constitutional Working Group that they examine that part of the Constitution. Okay, all right. I think maybe we should consider doing that, because it is regrettable that we don't have greater diversity, and we've absolutely did say this at the time, that it was a shame that there wasn't a greater diversity of applicants. But you know, we have got some excellent people to recruit. But absolutely take your point on board, and you know, I would be the first person standing up for that principle as well, and absolutely I was. Yeah, smiling Riley, because it is a point that I also made. But yeah. Right, so thank you for that question, Diana, and thank you for that question, Jess. Do you feel like we have managed to answer it sufficiently?
Yeah, I think there's ways that when you're doing a recruitment, you can actually go out. I mean, there's no doubt there's sufficient quality of women in East Devon that could sit on this committee, and for whatever reason it hasn't translated, the recruitment process hasn't translated into that. So I absolutely think we should be making a recommendation to increase the number, to increase the diversity, and to put that recommendation forward, if we can't actually just simply go and
appoint co-opt people. Yeah,
thank you.
They have to go through, I think. So Debbie, can we put that maybe on the next agenda, please?
In terms of re-examining it to feed back to the Constitution Working Party?
Yes, well, so without wanting to, on the hoof, engage resources without having thought about it properly, is it something that we could put onto the agenda as a process?
So we'll flag up
committee?
For the next meeting?
Yeah.
And go from there?
Yeah, and then we'll have a time between now and then to consider what resources are required.
And we'll have our new members at that point as well, Chair.
Yes,
so.
yes.
Okay, yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So that will go on to the next agenda for January. Thank you very much for that. So going back to our recommendation, which is to appoint these 6 people, Does anybody have any more comments or want to talk about any of these recommendations, or are we happy to vote on them? Serena?
I just wonder, I'm not familiar with how the recruitment usually goes, but even the representatives at town and parish meetings, if I represent Honiton Town Council, but I can't remember anyone even mentioning the recruitment for people for this committee. And even when I was recruited, it was because there was an East Devon councillor who was aware of it that approached me to suggest I put an application in. So I just wonder, it's a committee that's shrouded in mystery when you get down to the sort of the town and the parish. I also represent a parish meeting, and there are, people on there that I think would be very suitable, whether a personal approach or a personal letter or something, not an email to go out, because everyone looks at emails, and depending on their busy day, they're not going to take that much notice. But when we have our town council meeting, we have representatives from East Devon come to that meeting. It would be nice if they could actually mention it, because we've got quite a few female councillors on the town council. Just a thought.
Thank you, Serena. And I mean, I think I do believe that these have been put many times into the newsletter that goes out to parishes and towns, that goes to the clerk. So in theory, your clerk should be passing it on to the members.
I'm sure with the best of intentions, our clerk has looked at it, seen it. It's just never been discussed. And I would be in a good position to say to people on the town council about the value of sitting on this committee and what it's for. It's just never been mentioned. I just let you know that then.
Okay, thank you, Serena.
Yeah, no, and hindsight's an amazing thing, isn't it? Because if we knew we weren't going to receive many applications from a certain, part of society, then we would have perhaps thought of doing something different. But you don't know that when you put them out. So yeah, but it's a valid point.
And we absolutely.
But we can look at
needed
that
to
at the next
appoint
committee
people.
and see. Yeah.
Because people's terms of office were expiring in December, and so by the time the second round of advertisements went by, we were really up against a deadline to appoint some people, because otherwise we would have had nobody come the 10th of December. But, well, we would have had a few people, but not everybody. We would have had a lot of vacancies.
We did promote it quite heavily this time, because we brought our comms team in to make sure that we really did get the message out there to people.
So I think a lot of the people who came for interview saw an ad on Facebook. So maybe that's something we can consider tweaking, so that next time it is specifically aimed at diversity. And it was interesting that in the interview process, some people said, "Oh yes, I saw it the first time, and I thought, that's not for me." And then I saw it the second time, and then the third time, and then by the fourth time, they were thinking, "Actually, maybe that is for me." So maybe we just need to keep going with those ads. So that was quite amusing, actually, because a couple of people said that during the interviews. Right. Okay. Are there any more questions, comments? Are you happy to vote on these 6 people so that they be co-opted into the committee?
It's recommending to council.
Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, so the recommendation is actually a recommendation to full council. It's not going to the 26th because that's a single item meeting. It will go to the 10th of December. So it will be on the full council agenda on the 10th of December that we appoint these 6 people, if that is this committee's wish. So I don't know, have we heard, do you feel like you've had enough to say on the independent persons? Are you happy for us to go to the vote on this? Okay, so I always like to ask the independent persons before we vote so that we get a steer. Right, so if you are happy to recommend to full council that these 6 people be appointed to this committee for the roles that are outlined in the document, voting members, would you please raise your hand now? I'll vote as well. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, okay, moving on, not so swiftly, it turns out, to agenda item 8, which is applications for dispensation. Now, this is the one that Jess is going to absent herself for. Thank you very much for being here, Jess. Sorry. Something about sitting in this place with the air conditioning blasting at one. Right, so applications for dispensation. Now, this is because among the membership of East Devon District Council, we have several people who are dual hatters or triple hatters, but specifically the dual hatters who are district councillors and county councillors are potentially faced with a dilemma about where to vote and how to vote and whether to take part. So there are a few people who are in that category. Therefore, they were offered the opportunity to apply for a dispensation so that they could discuss the matter in both places without prejudice. And Mel's going to come in at this point and explain more, I think.
Thank you. Yes, the committee will remember that earlier in the year you granted a number of dispensations to both members of the county council and also to members who were also officers in other district councils. So those dispensations were granted. We then obviously had the May county council elections, so the members who were on the counties changed a little bit. So now that we are making quite a big decision in relation to local government reorganisation in the next week, we've had 3 members come forward who would wish to apply for dispensations. Those are Councillor Nick Hookway, Councillor Paul Hayward, Councillor Paul Arnott. They are all members of the county council. And basically they are seeking dispensation so that they could potentially take part, so that they can confirm and they can take part in the discussion and the debate. Now, in relation to Councillor Arnott, he's made it clear that because he's currently the lead at the County Council for local government reorganisation, that he has no plans to exercise that dispensation at the moment for this decision on which proposal goes forward. But as you can imagine, once the decision has been made, there will be a lot of reports coming forward on local government reorganisation, and it may be at that point he feels, it's appropriate for him to take part, but that will obviously depend on the circumstances. And I suppose what it's important for me to say is even if a member has a dispensation to enable them to take part, they still have to make a decision on whether they feel that they can come to it with an open mind so that they're not biased, they're not predetermined. So that issue doesn't go away. They have to consider that on every agenda and in every case. So if they were in that situation, they still shouldn't be taking part. So I just wanted to make that clear. So the applications before you, what I'm suggesting is that they would be granted for until the next election, basically. I think I've said 4 years. Yes, absolutely. So they can be up to 4 years, so until the next elections or until local government reorganisation, if that is earlier. I have been reflecting on the report slightly and thinking that it might be worth me also asking you for an additional recommendation in case there should be any sort of by-election on the county council and somebody changes, rather than having to bring it back. If the principle of granting to county councillors, dual-hatted county councillors, is agreed by this committee, then it might be worth if you were happy to give me a delegation to agree those dispensations in that situation if I receive further applications from members. It just would avoid the need to come back if the principle of granting to dual-hatted county council members for local government reorganisation is accepted by the committee.
Thank you, Mel. So I'm willing to actually propose that as a recommendation, even though I'm not convinced it's the best course of action, but it needs to be proposed by somebody. So I'm happy to propose it from the chair as an additional recommendation. Rob, you look like you're indicating you want to come in.
Yes, thank you. It was really just 2 things. I know this is obvious probably to the people on the committee, but as much for anybody watching. Obviously, this dispensation is only with regard to district council business. Those people will have to also apply for dispensation at the county when they're at the county level. I was going to suggest, because obviously it's the sort of second time this has come around to this committee, whether it might be worth having a delegation both for dual hatters but also for the people who are employed in case they take up another job, saves it having to,
Although standards for officers are not so much within our gift, are they, on this committee? It's more members.
So earlier in the year, the ones you granted was we've had, I think it was 2 officers two members who are also officers on other district councils that are affected by local government reorganisation. So it's about whether you would be happy to give me delegated authority if we have that situation again to grant those dispensations for local government reorganisation.
So presumably, Mel, you have a wording for that proposed recommendation.
Yeah, I can
If you could read it out. So I am happy to propose that from the chair, just because somebody needs to, and I really would welcome a debate on this. I see Councillor Collins waving his hand up for me. Councillor Collins, if you wish to speak, can you please confirm that you have no declarations of interest, or that you have got declarations of interest?
Thank you, Chair. I've got no declarations, but I did notice that Councillor Jeffries is missing from your list, who's county councillor. And he did come to one meeting here when he had to declared an interest and left the room.
So I think I'm not wrong in saying, and I'm sure Mel will correct me if I am wrong, that a declaration of interest on this basis is very much an individual thing, and every single dual hatter is free to decide for themselves what they wish to do. And I think Councillor Jeffries may have come to a different decision from the 3 people listed in the report about what he wants to do.
Yes, the report only deals with those ones where they've come to me and said that they want to apply for a dispensation. So he hasn't requested to apply, but that's you're absolutely correct, Chair. But of course, if he did change his mind, the delegation would obviously help that I would be able to grant that moving forward if he felt moving forward that he did want to apply for a dispensation.
So the extra recommendation that Mel is proposing would streamline any future process somewhat. Although personally, I probably shouldn't. No, I'll hold fire on that and just see what the independent people think. Diana, please.
I think it's eminently sensible. I couldn't, I had to think why we were seeing all this again when we'd been through it once, and presumably if we thought those first few should go through, anybody's in a similar situation, it should be delegated to Melanie and save the committee time. I think it's totally sensible.
Thank you, Diana. Martin?
I agree with the sentiments, and I think it makes complete sense. But I think I'd ask Melanie just to check that this is a power that can be delegated. My recollection is that it's expressly required that decisions on dispensations are made by the Standards Committee. And I'm just being cautious that if you could just check that it is something that can legitimately be delegated to the monitoring officer, I'd feel just a little more confident on that issue. So I'm with you, I fully support it, it makes sense. And as Diane says, in a way, a blanket, this is what I'm concerned about. I don't think there was ever an intention under the Act that there could be a blanket dispensation. It had to be for named individuals for a specific purpose, so that the Standards Committee was shown to be considering requests for dispensations on their merits on each occasion. I'm just being cautious to ask you.
Can I come in on that
yes,
point?
Please
so
do.
You raised a really valid point. So on my memory, but I am going to have to double check it. So usually what happens is that monitoring officers are delegated the first 2, which is about quorum effectively, and the ones that have the discretion, like these ones, go to the committee, because obviously if you're exercising discretion, it feels more appropriate that the committee would deal with it. I suppose the issue here is you've already decided what that discretion is, i.e. you already feel it is appropriate to grant those dispensations to county council members. So I think it is absolutely fine for you to sort of agree the principle of it and confirm that you're happy for me to grant further dispensations if applications arise. But I will absolutely double check in case, I'm wrong on that.
Can I go one step further?
Yes, please.
It could be argued that if that's the case, and if you're happy that the power lies with us to make a decision for an unnamed individual that's yet to be identified, that in making the decision today, we agree for these 3 names, And for other name, we agree at this meet, or you agree at this meeting, that if another name comes forward following a by-election that falls into exactly the same category, then that dispensation is agreed today for that yet to be identified person. And then that requires no delegation, and the matter is effectively dealt with because it becomes a matter of administration. And if there's a by-election and someone comes into the slot, then Melanie knows that that person will enjoy the benefits of that dispensation. So I could make that as a practical suggestion, which requires no delegation.
A rewording of.
Yeah, I think that's a much better suggestion than my suggestion. Yeah,
That is why we have independent people.
yeah, absolutely. So we could basically just amend paragraph 1 that actually doesn't name the individuals in question. But I mean, we could add some wording to the end of that to say whether, the current applications or any future
So
applications.
after members, approve the granting of dispensations of dual-hatted and county and district council members, comma, including future members that may
Including
be elected.
future applications, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then, just put a clause in.
yeah.
Ken. Sorry, Debbie.
Can I suggest adding on to the very end of that meet the same criteria, just to cover off what
Yes.
Martin had raised
I think
there?
that's
Just
wise
so
as
it's
well.
completely clear.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ken.
Yeah, just one small point, Chair. Melanie, I can't remember the exact wording that you used, but you talked about the individual consideration that people would need to make prior to a specific meeting. So I just, is that sort of, does that need to be documented or just made clear that regardless of this, there is that individual consideration required?
Members are fully aware of that, but I am about to be issuing guidance to all members because they're making this important decision next week. And what I can also do is when I'm writing to those individuals, if the dispensations are supported, I can make it clear that, you still have to go through the thinking of whether there is bias and predetermination and whether it is appropriate to take part. So I can add some wording to that effect in the dispensation
I think
letter.
that would be helpful, yes.
Yeah.
Let's remind people of their duty to become not predetermined meetings. Yeah, I think that's worth doing. Definitely. Does that satisfy or allay concerns? Okay, so effectively we're scrubbing out Mel's recommendation. We're adding one clause in paragraph 1, which I think will possibly at some point appear on the screen, or will I be reading them out? Do you think you mind, just so that, I might be challenging Debbie's technical. No, let's just keep talking while Debbie's plugging stuff in. Oh, is everybody happy with Melanie just reading it out? Will you be able to get an idea of what it's about? Okay, all right. So we're happy with Mel to read it out, I think, because otherwise I think we might be taxing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, does this
Debbie's
even make
technical
sense?
ability too much.
So I've got approve the granting of dispensations to dual-hatted county and district members, including any future applications, to enable them to discuss and vote on any matter relating to devolution or local government reorganisation in Devon. Such dispensations to take effect from the date of the meeting. Oh, sorry, that meet the same criteria. That needs to go slightly earlier at the end of in the first sentence. So basically to agree any dispensations, including any future applications that meet the same criteria. Yeah.
So we are pre-approving dispensations, and they don't then therefore rest entirely with Mel. Yeah. Which is, if we're comfortable doing that. Rob, sorry.
I was going to say, are you going to also then put in a paragraph for the other category, which is people employed by the other authorities? Otherwise, you still have to potentially come back should that one get triggered.
I have got an unpleasant feeling that we're straying into making policy on the hoof here, and I'd really quite like this to come back to the next meeting rather than, I totally take your point on board, but I feel like we need to think about it some more. I don't know what other people think.
I think the risk is less there of any further ones coming forward anyway, because it affects very few members. So I think probably the priority is getting the county council members, just in case there's any changes there. But yeah, we can always deal with that a separate
Because
time.
there's a lot more interplay, isn't there, between being an officer and being a member, and it does apply to a few people in our membership. that they are also officers on other local authorities.
Yeah, there's very few that are on other district councils.
Yeah.
There's town councils,
Yeah.
but there's very few on.
I don't know what people feel, but I think I'd feel happier if that particular suggestion could come to the next meeting rather than be, because I think it's probably quite wide-ranging as a suggestion, and we do need to give it some thought, I think. So if that could go to the January meeting as well, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, would you mind leaving that at my discretion? Because if I feel that I don't need it,
Well, we need to add it as a recommendation, then or do we?
no, if we're just going to go with the county council members, the dual hatted, because that's where the change is most likely to happen. So that's the higher risk
Okay.
area for me.
So as you read out then?
Yeah.
But no recommendation for. All right, okay. So independent people, representatives, is there anything more you wish to say or add or ask or? Okay, so members, Ian.
As a former county councillor, therefore dual hatter, I think this is totally sensible. So I totally agree with what's been put forward.
And you're both former dual hatters, aren't you? Yeah. So, and Stuart was agreeing with you, so it seems like it might be a sensible way to proceed then. Fabulous. Tim, you got anything you wish to add?
Well, I did want to say earlier that I actually wondered whether the current wording was sufficient to cover because it doesn't actually mention the fact that these are dispensations have already been asked for, and I wondered whether in fact what we have said already, apart from the last sentence there, to take effect from the date of the meeting, and I would have amended to take effect from the date of this meeting or their application, whichever is the sooner.
Yes.
What
Yeah, that makes sense.
My thought was.
Because now we've amended it to include any
But I
people who
do
might
agree
apply in the
with
future.
as
Yeah.
everybody else, with the sentiment of what's going on.
Okay, does that satisfy you, Mel? Yeah. Okay, fabulous. All right, so to recap what we may be about to vote on, and are we still quorate, by the way? Yeah. We are, aren't we? Yes. Okay, fabulous. So, Mel, do you think you could reread your recommendation 1, please?
Approve the granting of dispensations to dual-hatted county and district members, including any future applications, to enable them to discuss and vote on any matter relating to devolution or local government reorganisation in Devon, subject to their meeting the same criteria. We can probably change the order of that. Such dispensations to take effect from the date of their meeting or the date of their application, whichever is the sooner.
Is everybody happy with that? And the other two, just for the sake of the record, they're not changing, are they? No. And there's no addition at this point. So that is what we would be voting on. Are we happy to move to a vote, or does anybody want to say anything more? Okay, let's move to the vote then. So if you are in favour of accepting these 3 recommendations as amended, would you please raise your hand now? I better vote on these as well, hadn't I? Thank you very much, that's unanimous. Wonderful. All right, moving on swiftly to agenda item 9, which is strengthening. Oh, no, she's gone. She had to leave at 9:30 anyway, and so when we finished at 9:20, she made her exit. She had another meeting to go to. But thank you for reminding her. If she had been still outside, that would have been sad. Right. Okay, moving on to agenda item 9, which is strengthening the standards and conduct framework for local authorities in England consultation, which first came to us, I think, in January meeting. That was quite a while ago, wasn't it? Right, I'm going to hand over to you on this, I think, Mel.
Thank you. Yes, this is very much, I was going to say a joint effort between myself and Debbie, but actually Debbie did most of it. So the timing of this, it was very good that the timing of this, but it literally came out, didn't it, the day that we were going to publish the agenda or the day before. So we had very little time to either get our heads around this and Debbie just pulled it all together into this report very kindly. So if I can basically take you through it, really it all starts on at the bottom, let me just check. Yeah, on page 14, So with the heading Introduction of Mandatory Code of Conduct. So as you know, we responded to the consultation and we had some really good discussions and debate and put a really good response in. So in response to the views that they've received, the government is proposing to prescribe a mandatory code by taking a power in the primary legislation to set out the code and regulations. They have said somewhere that they will do this when time allows. So I don't know how urgently this will be dealt with. If I were the government, with all the local government reorganisation going on, I would try and get it in place for local government reorganisation so that councils were starting on this new mandatory code, but I don't know. So who knows when that will happen. So so obviously that will lead to some debate about the content of that mandatory code. And we won't be able to develop our own guidance and protocols, and we'll have to align it with the mandatory code. So and they also want to cover submitting multiple vexatious complaints to be a code of conduct breach, which is interesting. So so that also sounds like that could be quite positive. So in terms of standards committee, and this is where we don't really have an issue anyway, they're proposing to legislate to require all relevant principal authorities to formally constitute a standards committee. So, you know, hopefully most authorities do already have that, but I know there are some that don't. And then they will require any code of conduct investigation to be completed and investigation findings and decisions to be published, including when the investigation findings are no case to answer and the member is exonerated, and in the event that a member stands down during an investigation. So it's good that we're going to have clarity around that, because even as a committee we've had discussions about what stage do you publish and publicise complaints and things like that. So we are going to get some clarity around you know, what they think the rules should be in relation to that. So they're obviously going to engage with representative bodies and stakeholders to develop some best practice guidance on the handling of code of conduct complaint allegations. So I suspect they'll probably liaise with the local, the National NALC, the National Association of Local Councils, and various bodies in terms of the LGA, things like that, to basically see what they think will be best practice. They will retain the statutory responsibility of promoting and maintaining high standards of contact within the Standards Committee, so that's all really positive. In terms of empowerment, and this is obviously sort of a new area, they are going to legislate to provide both complainants and respondents, elected or co-opted members, with a right for review of Standards Committee investigation decisions. And they're going to set out the grounds in legislation for assessing eligibility to consider a right for review request at the local level. I personally am a bit nervous about that, because having been pre-Localism Act, where every decision was subject to a right to review, I think I've mentioned to you in the past, I had a serial complainant who made about 120 complaints in 1 year. Every one of those had to go to this right of review, so we had to have 240 of those, you know, meetings to discuss those. So, you know, it can be significant. So I'm very interested, and I'm hoping that the criteria will be tight, because I do understand the right for review where you know, in certain circumstances, absolutely, particularly if you're getting into suspension grounds or things like that. But I think the devil will be in the detail in relation to that one. They're going to include recommended actions to support those affected through the complaint and the investigation process, and they're looking at ways of doing that. I think that's really positive. It is a stressful process for all parties concerned, so the more we can do to support people, I think that's excellent. And they're also talking about an independent confidential helpline offer for complainants. So that's interesting, but it's interesting that that's obviously only for complainants. That's not supporting members particularly. So yeah, the devil will be in the detail in all of this. Then another important area, introducing the sanction of suspension. So that's obviously something we've all, I think I'm right in saying, all been waiting for. So they will be providing authorities with the power to suspend elected members for serious code of conduct breaches for a maximum of 6 months, with the option to withhold allowances. So they have brought that in, and institute premises and facilities bans where deemed appropriate, which we can do at the moment anyway. They confirmed that a decision to sanction with a period of suspension and or institute premises and facilities bans can only be taken by a standards committee following receipt and consideration of a formal investigation report and following consideration of views of the independent person. So that's clearly positive. We would hope to see that in there. That's the safeguards, isn't it? The legislation will enable standards committees to have discretion to withhold elected members' allowances and ban disruptive members from using council facilities or entering property, either as standalone sanctions or in addition to suspension. What I'm not reading there is whether there's any intention to try and ban members from council meetings. There's obviously no such power. But I suppose if a member was potentially, consistently disrupting council meetings, are they talking about going that far as well? But that would clearly involve a
Rings
change in
alarm bells for
legislation.
me, to be honest.
So
because
I'm not saying that's what they are saying.
meeting
but
chairs already have the power to suspend meetings if there's disruption. So I'd be concerned about an
but
overarching
it's not
power
clear,
being
is it?
applied on top of
It's
that.
It's not clear. But if you did have somebody that was particularly, so I'm not saying they would do that at all, but. And then in terms of interim suspension, the government plans to legislate to give authorities the power to place an elected member or co-opted member on interim suspension in response only to serious code of conduct allegations subject to external investigation from the police or other bodies within the criminal justice system, and or where a court hearing and sentencing is awaited. And they talk about cases where there are legitimate safeguarding considerations and the council is not in control of the pace and resolution of the investigation. They're also planning to legislate to confirm that the grounds to justify a standards committee taking a decision to impose an interim sanction, so that's obviously quite a serious step, must only take place if the matter is subject to law enforcement investigation and include the seriousness of the allegations and risk of harm. So they are really talking about those really serious cases that you would have the power to impose an interim suspension. And they're looking at setting a maximum period of an interim suspension at an initial 3 months and require ongoing review, which obviously sounds eminently sensible. They're also talking about consulting with authorities on whether we should be required to publish on our website a notice of decision to place an elected member or co-opted member on interim suspension while investigations are ongoing. I can understand why they want to further consult on that point. And as appropriate, a notice exonerating a member placed on interim suspension. Clearly, if you do the one, you've got to do the other, in my view. So yes, and then moving on to disqualification they're talking for multiple breaches and gross misconduct. They are looking to put in place a disqualification where a member has been subject to a sanction of suspension for the maximum period of 6 months on 2 occasions. So there will be that ability to disqualify. And then appeals and a national appeals function, which we talked about at length, didn't we? And I think there was various views on appeals, and the government plans to legislate on arrangement for appeals to code of conduct decisions following further consideration of the detailed requirements to support the proposed local right to review code of conduct case decisions. So yeah, watch the space on that one. They haven't quite reached their view. So the next steps is as they say, the necessary legislation will only be brought forward when parliamentary time allows. So who knows when that might be. So interesting reading.
Thanks, Mel. So I guess if you have any questions about things that Mel...
Hello.
It was 9. Yes, I'm afraid you are.
Sorry.
Welcome, Councillor Loudon. Do you have any declarations of interest? Tell us in a minute when you've logged in. Right. So where were we? Yes, so obviously this is only for noting this report
Yes,
because
it
it's an update on what the government thinking is. So if you have any questions for Mel about what she may have perceived from the feedback loop from Westminster, Councillor Collins, Roy, do you
Thank
have
you.
anything, question?
I
Hang on,
can't see-
I had Councillor
Oh,
Collins
sorry.
had his hand up. I'm going to go out of committee first and then come back into committee. Sorry, Roy,
Thank
have
you,
got a
Chair.
question?
I've got a question. So, if you've got a councillor and he hasn't behaved himself and he's banned for 6 months, what happens to his electors? How are they going to be represented?
Thanks, Roy. Mel, so.
They're not. In that sense, I mean, it depends, doesn't it? It depends whether it's a multi-member ward, because otherwise they'll be represented by the other members in that ward. But if it is a single-member ward, you know, that is potentially the issue, that whilst they're suspended, there will be nobody, you know, doing that work with residents.
Thanks,
So
thanks Mel. Roy?
the electors will be punished as well.
Yes, maybe they'll,
It's not
the
their
punishment will be
fault.
at the ballot box the next time, I suspect, if they are not represented for significant periods of time.
I mean, we've got 5 councillors for Honiton, but there's only 2 of us do any work. It's only me and Jenny. You
Okay,
don't see the
thank
others
you,
very
Roy.
rarely.
Thank you. Can we move on, please? Back into committee. Pauline, you were first, please.
I was just going to ask if we're going to suspend their money that they, or withhold their allowance. If a person is innocent or proved innocent, then do they get that money refunded to them? And I can't see anything in there that says.
We obviously, the devil's in the detail, but I
Yeah.
would have thought they would. I would
Yeah,
have thought
I
they
just
would.
thought,
You
you know,
can't
that-
really take something away, then find out that they actually haven't done anything wrong. I
Yeah.
think you'd have to give it
It
back.
says
wouldn't
about
you?
withholding it, but it
That's
doesn't say
my
anything.
personal view, but the devil will be in
Yeah.
the detail.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Martin, please.
Yes, I marked the same point about representation in wards as a result of suspension. I'm only here to represent views of the public, but it's totally unacceptable that the public would go unrepresented in a particular ward, that ongoing cases that might be in the hands of the councillor that was subject to suspension should be put on ice for potentially 6 months. So all I would have said, I think, or will say, is that it seems logical for, while these decisions are yet to be crystallised, is that this gives the local government community a sense of where the government is headed, but it can't be too late for the local government community to flag up the need for this to be addressed, which is simple enough, because there simply needs to be a mechanism to ensure some kind of support to members of the community during that period of suspension on a basis yet to be identified. Luckily, I don't have to
Particularly,
worry
yeah.
about that, but some basis does need to be identified.
Particularly as we go into local government reorganisation, and the number of ward members will drop, and therefore any suspension of that nature would result in thousands of people being unrepresented completely, because it will be single. Sorry, John.
No, go on,
Go.
please.
No, I have finished. I have finished.
First of all, my sincere apologies. My personal calendar said 10, so, right. What was I going to say? We await legislation at some point, so presumably the devil will be in the detail, but I wonder if we had an issue today. I'm in a single ward, a single member ward, so it's just me. So if I don't know, if I got run down by a bus tomorrow and I was out of action for 6 months.
Not that sort of rundown.
You're harsh. You're harsh. Then, or if there's a planning application in my ward, I mean, for my property, and this has happened actually, then it would we would then look to a member, as I understand it, from another adjoining ward to step in on the planning issue. So I can imagine that there will be a mechanism. But I mean, Roy is quite right. I mean, the electors, one way or another, will be disenfranchised, and unfortunately, that's life is sometimes harsh.
And I think the chair is quite right. I think the electors would, one way or another, make their views known about that particular person and their shortcoming. One would hope and assume that to be the case.
At present, of course, that's the only sanction, isn't it? It's the threat of not being re-elected. Tim, please.
Yeah, just to add to what John's just said, as already will happen in the case of dispensations for long-term sickness or whatever, if you're in a single-member ward, the same thing would happen. I just wanted to make a comparison in the interim suspension case between this type of idea and the employment law types of idea, where, I mean, there's always a great furor from people affected by suspension when an investigation is being done for certain things, and people are saying they're being punished, etc., whereas, of course, those of us who are involved on the other side know that we are trying to protect, by that mechanism, protect both the employer and the employee. And my plea would be, whenever this comes forward, that we represent the fact that we need to protect both sides of this equation. And that's all I'd say, I think. If that's clear, I don't know.
Yeah, although of course it is not an employee relationship as such, is it? So it is complicated.
Of course not, and don't get me started on a hobby horse.
The hobby horse of hobby horsing. Does anybody have any more questions for Mel? Because I do have one question actually. And not willing to be indelicate, but how would one become aware of police investigation against a person? Is there any plans in the legislation for some kind of feedback loop?
This would be more likely if we'd referred it or the individual had referred it to the police. So, as we know, if it's a breach of a DPI, if I get an allegation that there's a breach of a DPI, I have to refer it to the police. So it would be that type of scenario, or a significant issue that came up. So we probably would be involved in some way. We may not always know, but you would hope that if the police knew it was an elected councillor and there was an issue that we needed to be aware of, then they would bring that to our attention.
One would hope that would be the case, absolutely. Right, does anybody have any more questions? Right, do you feel ready to note this report and move on then? John, have you got anything more you want to add?
No, thank you.
No, okay, all right. So we're going to note this report and move on. It's not for voting on, but thank you very much for your comments and feedback. And I think, as Mel says, the devil will be in the detail on how it pans out, particularly post-local government reorganisation, when we're all representing thousands and thousands and thousands of people, not just thousands and thousands. Right, agenda item 10, Code of Conduct's complaint updates. So there's a very short cover. The bulk of it is in the annex. And it's very, very much less bulky than it used to be. But Mel, over to you, please.
Yes, thank you. Katie prepared this before she left. So thanks to Katie for producing this. The positive side of this report is obviously that numbers continue to go down, and this is showing you almost all of 2025 with a total of 8 complaints, which is very positive compared to the number that we've received in previous years, and it's gradually gone down over the last 4 years. So that's really positive. What is also really positive is that we are complying with the stage 1 timescales for all of the complaints in this report. The picture is not the same for the stage 2. The first 3 complaints in the list were all ones where we were due to workload issues. The ones thereafter were due to some quite linked, complex complaints that were all tied up together, and therefore it takes a lot more time to go through them. But it's definitely an area that we need to continue working on in terms of trying to meet those timescales. But just so you know, at the moment, I don't have anybody supporting me on them at all. So because Katie's now gone off I don't know if it's, I won't say in, I'll say afterwards, but it's not appropriate to say in a public meeting. I am in the process of recruiting to a new Assistant Director Legal and Governance role. So they will, when they start in hopefully 3 months' time, be supporting me on this. So you may see a little bit of delays over the next few months because I'm trying to juggle doing it at the same time. But the process, you know, the process is robust now. We've got everything that we need, and so I'm confident moving forward that, you know, when I've fully resourced, that we can continue doing the good work that we've been doing. So you've obviously got those 8 complaints. We've given you an update in terms of the 2 inquiries that we received between July and November. So again, not a significant number of inquiries. So that's really positive. And then we've given you the normal data chart showing that breakdown in terms of the complaint split. As you can see, there are more district complaints in 2025, which is unusual. But that's because obviously the numbers are so low, so it's not surprising. And then you've got the breakdown of where the types of breaches, alleged breaches. So interesting, the biggest one is obviously courtesy and respect, which is not surprising. But, you know, there is quite an even split between some of them. So it just gives you a nice breakdown of where those complaints are coming from. And then the outcomes for stage 1 and for stage 2. So stage 1, the vast majority of those complaints went through to stage 2. Only 1 was rejected. But then when you get to stage 2, we've had 1 that was referred for informal resolution and 5 where there was no further action. And we've had none referred for investigation. And then on the last slide of that report, you will see what I was mentioning earlier, the reduction, the consistent reduction in the number of complaints and indeed the number of investigations over the last 5 years. But having said that, of course, investigations and complaints are important. You know, it's good that we've got a process where people have legitimate things, and if something does need to be investigated, then it should be investigated in appropriate circumstances, but they do tend to be the more serious circumstances.
Thank you, Mel. So obviously this is a system which permits legitimate scrutiny of everything we do, which is absolutely as things should be. And so for that, we are very thankful that it is a process that is working still. And we've still got signs of life from it. But I think, speaking as somebody who's been on Standards for quite a while, I think it's an absolute breath of fresh air that there are now so many fewer complaints than there used to be, sitting month after month on the logs, just not really going anywhere, which is what used to be the case, sadly. So does anybody have any questions for Mel about this update? John?
Not a question, but I just want to put it into some context. And this committee has continually over the last few years heard from Mel and her colleagues about the general decline in the number of, that's putting it into a negative, isn't it? But the reduction in the number of complaints made, etc. And this committee has continually seen that as a very positive, as it is, step forward. And all I want to do is put it into context. And forgive me, I just happened to look on local social media this morning, and I'm not going to embarrass the council by saying its name, but there's a report about one of the Devon councils this morning, and it's talking about the number of complaints against their councillors that have been lodged since summer 2023. So over a 24-month period, the sort of time frame we've been monitoring very closely and seeing the reduction here. So there were 57 complaints lodged against that particular, and this is a council at the level of this one, so it's not a town or a parish, it's at this level. So there were 57 complaints lodged against 30 of their councillors. So that's probably, I don't know how many of the councillors are, so that's probably, you know, half or maybe more of their councillors. Now, one doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes, what's driving it, it doesn't talk about how many were upheld, etc. I just thought, I think actually there's sometimes when we should be doing a bit of patting ourselves on the back and saying to Mel, you know, the hard work that you and your colleagues do actually pays dividends. So I just thought I'd put that all into context.
Absolutely, 100% agree. I mean, everything that Katie and Mel have been doing helps to not. I don't mean defuse situations, but to give a realistic impression of what's possible, and does actually help to defuse things that could go on to become quite nasty. Roy, you had your hand up, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think our results are so good because we've had so much training. We've had a lot of training to learn to respect other councillors and take their views and things. And I think that is the reason it would be interesting to follow up with the council that John is talking about to see what training they've had. Maybe they had not had the training. Thank you.
They also don't have our monitoring officer. Because we have her. Ken, please.
Yes, yeah, it was just an observation, but it was linked to the issue of training. When we were looking at this previously, we used to see training quite a lot, or the need for retraining. And with one exception, I don't see any reference to training there. So I was taking that as a positive, that the training that's taken place has been effective. And it would seem from looking at your report, Mel, that that isn't, you know, a trend that you're seeing as much certainly as you used to. The need for retraining.
The serious cases getting to the stage where a training sanction, I suppose, is given. But you know, you both make very good points, in that the training that we all receive as a body of councillors is yielding results, and also the work that Mel does with the towns and parishes. I think, you know, approaching them and explaining about the code of conduct and what's possible and what's not possible. That's all yielding results, and I think it's been a gargantuan body of work, but it is actually showing in the hard stats now, which is wonderful.
Just
Mel.
add to that, we've just done another training session just for the independent members' awareness, and I'm going to be doing another one either before Christmas or after Christmas as well. So we're trying to keep that training up.
Yeah, so as you say, Roy and Ken, the routine training is showing dividends. It's bearing strong dividends. Pauline.
I just wanted to ask, all right, we've had several court members on our town council, and we've also got elections at the moment. How do you get on about training for those people? Because usually you do it at the start of it when we have the elections. But all these people that come in, you know, we've got a few at the moment. Casually, yes, they're opted on.
I mean, those towns or parishes can certainly get in contact with us and ask for some training. I suppose it's more difficult with towns and parishes because sometimes DALC are the ones that provide the training. So it isn't, you know, we're not the only training provider for towns and parishes. But certainly if anybody feels that they need some training, and I do have a plan to do a session with towns and parishes anyway, so that is due.
Yeah, I just wondered, you know, because it must happen in lots of councils. Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. Are there any more questions for Mel? Okay. Are you happy to note the contents of this report and move on then? All right. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your continued work, Mel and Katie. Right. Agenda item 11, gifts and hospitality update. Right. Back to you, Mel, please.
Yes. So as you'll remember, I think it was the last meeting, you approved the new gifts and hospitality protocol. So it seemed a very good time to start the new 6-monthly update in terms of gifts and hospitality that has been declared. So you have in front of you a report with an appendix which shows the gifts and hospitality declared by members and the gifts and hospitality declared by officers. You will notice that the officers are not named. I won't name officers unless they are assistant director level and above, but anybody else I would just say what service area they come from. So this basically shows you what has been declared. On the back of our adopting the new gifts and hospitality protocol, that's now being adopted by full council, I will be doing some training for members because I do want to make sure that our members are sufficiently aware of that need to declare, because at the moment I'm hoping the 3 that have been declared is all the ones, but I don't 100% know that. So I want to do some more work in terms of just making sure that members are very, very aware of that requirement to declare their gifts and hospitality. In relation to officers, our process is not brilliant at the moment. We have a very manual process, and so that's an area where I'm looking to update the process to an electronic process, because there's nothing like having a manual process to put people off declaring. You need to make it very simple. You need to improve it. So that's one of the areas I've just not got to since I've been here, but that's an area that I want to do some improvement on that, and it will be interesting to see whether over the coming months that will see any increase in the number of declarations. But we are keeping regular reminders to members and officers in our staff and members newsletters, so we're keeping that profile up there, but there is some more work to do just to make sure that this is capturing everything, so some more training definitely I think is needed.
Thank you, Mel. Questions, comments? Rob?
It was just regarding one of the officers' declarations of Sidmouth Jazz Festival tickets. I presume or hope that it was either sort of tickets that were generally given and went to Employee of the Month or whatever, or some sort of lottery, for the benefit of staff, rather than going from the councillor in question direct to a member of staff, because if that were the case, I would be concerned whether that was appropriate. It's not like a dinner or something.
I think that's really helpful feedback, and I think I might use that feedback because I do want to raise awareness within staff in terms of the appropriateness. I don't know exactly what was done with it. The form at the moment, which needs updating, doesn't capture all of that. Obviously, the manager will be aware, so one can only assume that the manager was satisfied that it was reasonable, but it is an area that I want to have a little look at just to make sure that managers are appropriately deciding whether gifts should be accepted or not, and officers are clearer in terms of the guidance and best practice in this area.
Thank you, Mel. I don't know whether we could do with streamlining the process for members as well, to be honest.
Okay.
Because it's a bit of a faff.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Take that away and we'll look at that as well.
Just as a reminder, if any members are finding it a bit of a faff, more than happy to assist. Chair?
Thank you very much for reminding us of that, Debbie. Martin?
Yes, I really wanted to just talk about awareness again, but I will just, probably because it's been raised, the jazz festival, I did hear, not in relation to a district councillor, that discounted tickets were being given to people such as town councillors, and possibly others, I don't know, but it did slightly raise a thought in my mind as someone on this committee as to whether, members of the public would call it a perk. Now, it may not be relevant at all to district councillors, but it came into my hearing from a source I have to trust, because that person would have knowledge of that. But the more important issue was to quickly talk about people's awareness, councillors' awareness, and just to ask a precise question, for induction for new councillors, is it definitely part of the routine? Yes. Are they given forms that would enable them to, or given the route? In the old days where you're inducting someone and you want them, for example, to claim something, you give them a bunch of forms, so you give them the tools to do the job. So I'm just a little cautious about seeing the numbers involved and how low they are, whether A, there's enough awareness, and B, whether the tools are there to enable the declarations to be made. And lastly, I was interested to see Councillor Fitzgerald has made declarations that seem perfectly reasonable. They happen to fall below the £50 limit. But I've got to be honest, I'm pleased to see that, because it shows an openness of thinking. And although we can't force it because the limit is £50, it does seem to be a welcome practice that people are so open in their affairs that they're happy and willing to record those and report those when they happen.
If I may, Chair, just come
please.
back on those points. On that last point, I did debate whether I put those items on the agenda for that very reason, because there's no requirement. So actually it's over £50 you should be seeing, but I felt exactly the same way, that it's open and transparent. It's very good that the member did declare it, so that's why they're on there. In terms of the training for members, I'll start, but I think Debbie will probably have some to add. So I do training when after the elections on what I call standards in public life training, and also the code of conduct training. It's covered in both of those arenas, and as I've mentioned, we put regular 6-monthly updates in the members' newsletter, particularly before Christmas, that time of year, to remind people that they need to be making sure that they're declaring. But there may be other things that we do that Debbie can comment.
Yes, hopefully to reassure you. So we'll do this with new members, whether they're elected at a main election or a by-election, when we're taking them through the tech. So when they're doing their register of interest, that is done online, and we'll take them through that. And the same with gifts and hospitality. I guess from personal experience, the number of years I've been working for the council, those instances of the offer have definitely dropped. And I'm also aware that there are some members who will tell me they were offered something but turned it down. I try and encourage them to register the fact that they've turned it down. They seem to be more reluctant to do so. They feel they're more obliged to register what they've accepted. But again, I think it is just as we are at that time of year, we can do another push in January again, I think, of did you get anything for Christmas? And go from there. But yes, we absolutely take them through that option. I think for members, because they rarely get those offers or accept gift and hospitality, when it comes to then going through the technology to log it when it does happen, because they do that rarely, they may forget. But again, the whole of Democratic Services team are more than happy to talk to a councillor, and we can go through the process on their behalf and get that registered. So there's absolutely no barrier to declaring anything. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that offer, Debbie, and that obviously extends to all members. Serena.
Just a point of clarification, please, Chair. If a councillor on a town council receives a hospitality gift and they declared it to their clerk, their office, what's the mechanism for that coming to the monitoring officer? Is it down to the individual councillor, or is it the clerk of the council having
I believe
been
that's covered
notified?
by the code of conduct for that particular council. It would not come to us if it's a town or parish. I don't think it's purely administered by your own council. So that would come under their code of conduct. So it's literally only members of this council who have to do this.
So the requirement in the code is to declare it to the monitoring officer. So it should be coming through to me. But not everybody's code is the same. So not everybody has it in their code. So each town and parish will be different. So we probably need to just check the wording of some towns and parishes and see whether it says in there it's to be declared to the monitoring officer. But certainly historically, that was the actual wording. But of course, because there is no mandatory code anymore, it could be that some parishes have written in there. So we just need to look at that. But yes.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah. I certainly got them in my old authority, but they were very few, because I recognise that towns and parishes very rarely do get gifts and hospitality. So there were very, very low numbers, but yeah, we can look at that.
I suppose I'd have presumed that you might just get a register every year, well, once a year, of what's happened in that year at particular parishes. Sorry, Serena.
I was just going to say, in that case, I need to go back and check with our clerk and the wording on our code.
Pauline.
Can I just ask, do the officers get the training, the gift and hospitality training? You know, do they know what they can receive and how to put it down? I just wondered, you know.
Is it in their employment contracts?
Yeah, because it's part of their code of conduct. So it would be training on their code of conduct, which HR would provide. I have to say off the top of my head, I don't recall, and I don't recall when officers last had training on their code of conduct, but obviously it's something that is very much, you know, it's part of the Constitution that their attention is drawn to, that their managers should be regularly reminding them of requirements and things like that. But I'd have to check. I don't know the answer to when we last had training on that. Oh, sorry.
Yes, please, Debbie, do.
So I am aware that from our team, we regularly send reminders to the employees, and we specify a sort of a shortened version of what is in the code of conduct as a reminder. So they've literally got it in the same email rather than having to go away and refer it. So again, we regularly ask the question, and then obviously we're dependent on them coming back and reporting to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Rob, please.
Just two comments really. One was the discussion about whether a town or parish had adopted the district code or had their own one and whether it came here. I don't know whether there is a register of which districts and sort of which town and parishes have and have not done that, but presumably, if not, that would be something that would be useful to know, because not only does it feed into whether they should be declaring their gift and hospitality to you or not, but it also affects whether, obviously, if they're using the district code of conduct, then the training for that should come from the district. So it feeds into multiple levels of this to sort of know Honiton use it, Sidmouth don't, or whatever the appropriate situation is. And the second one, I know you said you take it away, but I do, not going to be my issue as an independent person on this committee, but I do feel very uncomfortable with that officer declaration from a probity perspective.
I have noted it, and I am going to be feeding back to the senior leadership team, doing a little bit of an awareness raiser and the comments that came out of the Standards Committee, because I think that will be helpful.
But it is good that they declared it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could I just come back on,
Yes, please
Chair,
do,
on
please
the
do.
first point? It's something in the past, not here, but in the past, that I have tried to collate information about all towns and parishes in the area and what code they've had. And it was virtually impossible to do, because I'd get some that would respond, some that wouldn't. Then you'd get, they'd have adopted one code, and then you didn't know that they changed it, because, you know, that information is only good, you know, for the day that you're given that information. And with 60 towns and parishes, to keep on top of what they've got is virtually impossible. So the only time that we really need to know it is when we've got a complaint, and obviously we go directly and look at that code and look at the requirements. So whilst I totally agree with you, that would be absolutely perfect information to hold. From experience, with the resources that we have for these things, it's very difficult to, you know, keep that information and keep it, you know, gather it and keep it up to date.
Are there any more questions? Are we happy to note this report and move on then? Oh, Tim.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point, bearing in mind that who the only declarer, if you like, as far as councillors are concerned, that very much, and I'm sorry to make this point, Chair, when you're here in the chair, but obviously our chair and our vice chair are attending regular meetings, dinners, whatever, of other bodies because of the nature of their responsibility. And I do feel, in a way, that puts them in a separate situation from the situation most councillors are in. I don't know whether my view is shared by anybody. I don't know, but I just thought it was a point worth making.
I think it's worth noting that the vice chair is an awful lot better at paperwork than the chair is, and keeping on top of paperwork. So that will be being updated. It's, yeah, I generally just get rather, what's the word, panic stricken, then just send an enormous brain dump straight to DSO in the end.
Chair, I'm not in any way being critical there. That's not my view.
will be coming, is my point. Right. Are there any more questions? Yeah, please, Martin.
Sorry, I can't really resist. Two very quick points. The discussion about town councils and parish councils and their own codes of conduct, that's why we need a mandatory code of conduct, which the government is proposing. That's a good thing. And the core, if I may call it a core code of conduct, will apply across the board. Town, parish, district council, whatever layer exists. The other point about coming back to hospitality, again, from a public perspective, it is good to see as much as possible. If someone's a particularly busy councillor, where there are lots of occasions where they've been for meals, for example, in the course of their work, it's quite natural, quite normal, declare it, because it shows the public what is happening on the ground. It's a good thing, it's not a negative thing. And if there's a dozen for one councillor because they're the lead on the council in some respect because of their duties, that's a positive thing. If they happen to be a councillor that it only applies to once a year, well, they're only going to declare once a year. That's good too. It's just all about openness, transparency, and giving credibility to the public that these things are being sensibly and properly registered. And at the moment, I've got to say this honestly, it still looks low. You know, for a busy, active district council, typical of those that apply across the country in England and Wales, you probably would expect a little more, and I'm talking particularly about councillors more so than officers, you'd probably expect to see more activity. And what have we got? We've got 3 declarations from one councillor, and all of them fall below the limit. So from a public perspective, one might be a bit thoughtful. Are we seeing, as members of the public, the true picture, or for one reason or another, are we not quite seeing the full picture? That's why I'm sure it's right to keep reminding councillors to declare whenever they feel it's right and appropriate to do so.
John.
I just wanted to come in on the back of what Martin said, and I can't disagree with anything you said, save for one point. And I just think I would, if I'm anything to go by, and I've said this before, then in 6.5 years, I have genuinely had 1 pint. That is all I have had in 6.5 years, and that was many years ago. And I like to think I'm an active councillor, I'm a portfolio holder, I'm deputy leader. I haven't, maybe it's me, maybe nobody likes me, I don't know. Do not answer that, do not answer that. But I just wonder whether the opportunity, the exposure that we have to this, to offers of hospitality, I wonder whether it's as prevalent as people may anticipate. And I do wonder, I've only been here for 6.5 years, but if you've been on the council, say, for 10 years or 15 years, I wonder what it might possibly have been like back in the day. Now I'm seeing Pauline's going, no, not even then. So and in fairness, the one councillor who has declared, it has a particular role in the council, and therefore I would expect, as Tim was saying, I would expect her to have been exposed to more offers of hospitality than your average councillor. Now, I may be an oddity in more ways than one, but I just thought I would just try and give you some kind of reassurance that I tell you what, people are not, I've said this before, you go into the pub and people think, and they're constantly going on about all the brown envelopes you get. I wish, I don't wish, nobody has ever given me a penny, not even offered to give me a penny. So, I just would like to dispel the myth that it is there for the taking, frankly. I think life has changed, probably if it ever was different.
And if it can be at all reassuring, I mean, even as chair, my most likely event is a church service followed by a cup of tea, maybe a sandwich. Ian.
Yeah, I've been a district councillor since 2007. If anything, I get the opposite. It's normally you're overpaid for what you blooming do. And if I was to attend something, I'll have to pay in.
There's usually a donation involved as well into some. So actually, yes, it's actually a net cost. Most of it.
You end up buying them.
Well, usually, or bunging a tenner to the Devon Air Ambulance, most likely, or Devon Dartmoor Rescue. That's happened the other day. So that's the most usual thing. Yes, sorry, Pauline.
I can go one better. I've been on council nearly 27 years and I've never had any.
So I think maybe this, actually, Stuart, sorry, it's just Stuart, and then I'll say what I want to say. Stuart, come.
Yeah, I will come in on that because I mean, how long have I been on the council? 35 years now? Now, I can honestly say the only gift I ever received, and I was a portfolio holder, it was at county actually, and that was from the Tour of Britain. They sent me a couple of race shirts from one of the cyclists after the event for the work I put into it through helping organise it through the county. That's the only thing I had. But I can tell you, Roger Giles, everybody remembers Roger Giles, and I can honestly tell you, this is a true story. He actually had some old shoes given to him, and he declared them. Somebody gave him some old shoes, and he actually declared them. They were on the gifts. It was unbelievable. But no, that's all I've had. Nothing else.
Thank you, Stuart. So I think actually there is an interesting aspect coming out of our discussion just now, which is that maybe the public perception of us being showered with gifts is very much at odds with the reality of what actually happens. And actually maybe declaring when we are offered things is a good thing, because it might show the public that we are not being, even if it's a negative cost to us, because we then have to bung, a tenner in the donation box, because we've been invited to such and such a thing, it would be useful for people to know that as well. So actually, maybe it would protect us more. Thank you. Anyway, does anybody have anything more they want to say about this? I'm thinking not. So can we just note this report and move on and thank all the work that went into it, please? Okay, so this actually brings the public part of our meeting to a close. And I would like to thank everybody who is here, who has attended the meeting, and everybody who's watching online. I suspect that's probably not very many people, but thank you very much anyway if you are there. And safe drive home to people who are leaving now, and we will see you back in 5 minutes for the people who are staying for the